wondered, is ADHD genetic, or are there any other factors that are involved in it? Hello, my successful and healthy earthlings. Mihaela Ragushia, naturopath and founder of the Natural Health Podcast. In this episode today, I'm going to be talking about ADHD. I got an absolutely amazing question that came through. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast. We bring awareness of sustainable health in the business hustle space. Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for What Would I Do? In today's episode of Natural Health Podcast, we discuss this week's question, or questions are kept confidential, and I read and answer them as if it was me, hence why it's called What Would I Do? I'm not here to cure, treat, or provide medical advice. I'm here to educate and inform you so you're able to take steps towards optimal health. Please discuss any medical changes or anything with your healthcare professional. Let's get into today's question that I'm so excited about. It's a simple question and it reads like this. Is ADHD genetic or caused by other factors? What an amazing question. Thank you so much for writing in. I love it. I love it. I love it. I could sit here and talk about ADHD for hours, if not days, but I'll try and keep it as simple as I can in this 10-minute video. Let's look at ADHD. What is it? It's attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and it affects about 5 to 9% of children and is categorized by developmentally inappropriate levels of hyperactivity, impulsiveness, and attention that affects behavioral, emotional, cognitive, academic, and social functions. On that note, adults also have it. ADHD is seen as just a children's disorder or something, but adults also have it. So your question is going to be answered simply in one sentence. Genetic, neural, and environmental factors interact to create a neurobiologic susceptibility for the disorder that features reduced dopamine activity and low serotonin activity in your brain, which then triggers hyperactivity. So simply right there in that sentence, it's genetic, neural, and environmental factors that come together and cause this ball of ADHD. So it is not just environmental, it is not just genetic, it's a mixture of everything, of those things, right? So when you know that, it means you have a little bit more control, a little bit more power over your health to be able to make changes, right? So essentially, it's the signs. All right, let's have a look at signs of ADHD. There is inattentive type and hyperactive impulsive type, right? The interactive type is a lack of attention to detail, difficulty sustaining attention, difficulty with listening skills, difficulty with task completion, organization skills, task requiring stable attention. They frequently forget or lose belongings and easily distracted by external stimuli. Now, the hyperactive impulsive type is more fidgety, difficulty waiting for their turn, standing when sitting is expected, running around inappropriately, difficulty with quiet play, inability to relax and remain still, excessive talking or frequent interruption, impulsiveness expressed as acting without thinking. So these are some of the signs and symptoms that come across. There's so many more. So I'm just wrapping it up in a little ball so you can kind of get a feeling for 10 minutes of what it's all about, right? So evidence suggests that, answering your question, evidence suggests that ADHD is genetic. It's passed down from parent to child. And it also can run in families. At least about, I think it was 33% of fathers that have ADHD means that their children will have the condition. But the researchers are working to determine which genes it is that specifically show as ADHD, and they're investigating different genes that may play a role in developing ADHD, especially linked to the neurotransmitter dopamine, which is quite interesting. So scientific research suggests, but then that's that part of genetic, right? But then on the other hand, also research suggests that exposure to chemicals, everyday toxins that we're all exposed to all the time, if we live here in Australia, if we live on this world in a city, near a city, found in foods, cars, cleaning products, so many things, they contribute to at least somewhat disorders such as ADHD. So this is quite an interesting study here, saying infants and children are especially vulnerable to chemical exposure because their biological systems are still developing. And even in fetal development, exposure to even a little bit of toxins can have a lifetime impact on the children's brain and physical health. Brain development may be impacted by toxins, causing ADHD and so forth, right? But so there's genetics, there's toxins, there's so many other things that can cause ADHD or make ADHD a little bit worse or push it forward, right? So there's even nutritional deficiencies, and this is what I always talk about. Nutritional deficiencies linked to ADHD are huge. I'm talking about B6, B9, B12, iron, omega-3. Okay, so do you want me to go through that? And vitamin D, we'll go through that again. B6, B9, B12, iron, omega-3, and vitamin D are linked to dysfunctional serotonin activation in brain, which is a key regulator for dopamine, and has been linked to ADHD. So, these are some of the things, and then we can even go into further as to what they do. But I've only got 4 minutes left to talk to you about this, and we'll wrap it up. So, also your microbiome, your gut. Dysbiosis and impaired gut integrity and movement of inflammatory toxins, pathogens, microbiome. So many things can cause indicate. So it says here, research indicate that ADHD patients are at a greater risk of intestinal permeability, which therefore may increase the incidence of immune reactivations against free proteins such as gluten, triggering inflammation and neuroinflammation. And also, they also present with celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which may manifest without gastrointestinal symptoms, however, associated with mucous inflammation and immune activity. So, to put that in simple terms, it's saying that individuals who have ADHD are more likely to have an intolerance to gluten or even be celiac, all right? There's other things so your question was, is it only genetic? But I'm just digging deep into like nutritional deficiencies. And so many other things, toxins exposure, and here we're talking about gut impairment. The other thing is also a circadian rhythm cycle. Is a decrease or a non-functional circadian rhythm cycle can make ADHD worse, right? Bedtime resistance, delayed sleep onset, decreased sleep duration, night wakeness, daytime sleepiness, and disrupted circadian rhythms are prevalent in ADHD. Okay, so this is something that needs to be looked at. Some questions that I would ask myself is these are the things that I would go through is, what is my intake of all those vitamins that we spoke about, B6, B9, B12, iron, omega-3, and vitamin D, okay? What is the level in my body of them? Am I also intaking them through food, but what's my level in my body? What's my gut function like, okay? Review gut function. What's my gut function like? What's my circadian rhythm like? What's my sleep like? What's my EMF exposure like? What's my toxins exposure like? What is my inflammation like? Do I have an MTHFR mutation? What's my diet like? What's my zinc to copper ratio like? Where do I live? What am I exposed to? What's my lifestyle like? There's so many questions right here, right there. So what would I do? Well, one thing that I would do is I would review my B6, B9, B12, iron, omega-3, and vitamin D intake, but also what these levels are like in my body. I would reset my circadian rhythm, ensure that my circadian rhythm is on point, ensuring during the day I am awake, at night I am asleep. Sounds very simple, but this is absolutely key for individuals who have ADHD. I would review and optimize sleep. So what does my bedroom look like? What does my sleep routine look like? Am I sleeping optimally? Am I hitting all those 4 levels of sleep? I would review and optimize my gut with some probiotics such as LGG, NCF, and also BIO7 are absolutely amazing probiotics that have been assisted to help with gut function, which therefore indirectly also assists with ADHD symptoms. I would reduce my EMF exposure because there's research that I haven't had time to talk about, research about EMF exposure and ADHD. I would review and reduce my toxins that I'm exposed to every single day, have my windows open to get fresh air in, have air filters around, wash my clothes with non-toxic chemicals, wash the house, wash everything around me clean with non-toxic chemicals, reduce bright color exposure. I would dust, keeping things food organic, so many things to reduce your toxins. I would review and reduce my inflammation. I would test for the MTHFR gene. I would consider gluten-free and casein-free diet. It takes about 6 to 12 months to do so. If you do it for only for a few weeks or for a month and want to see results, it's not going to happen. It may, but it will take a while to kick in. So avoid coffee, cola, triggering foods, and so many things. So there's this pyramid that I found, and it talks about one of the biggest things to do is inclusive diet, nutrition, and gut health, then sleep, then exposure, outdoor play and movement, and dietary elimination, the key things. So, but the other thing also is I would also do there's tests available, right? One that you can just do at home, one for children between 6 and 18 is the Swanson, Noller, and Pelham version 4-scale teacher-parent form, SNAP, SNAP 1V4. For adults, is the Adult ADHD Self-Reported Scale, ASRS version 1.1. Right, quite interesting, and I did this myself, and I was very surprised at the results. Absolutely interesting for me. Quite interestingly, the results for the hyperactive ADHD came very high. Did it surprise me? It surprised me a little bit. But what am I going to do now is I'm going to do exactly what I said. I'm going to review all of my intakes of all of these B vitamins, my iron, my omega-3. I know I'm low in iron. I know I'm low in omega-3s. So many things. So hopefully that will assist the symptoms of ADHD, get my circadian rhythm on point, big exposure to light, reduce my EMF exposure. So many things. I mean, all those things I'm talking about is essentially for optimal health, right? So there you have it, a little bit of an insight on ADHD. I might do a whole video on ADHD because I've had a little bit of interest in it from individuals and business professionals. We're just so go that a lot of business professionals, entrepreneurs do have ADHD. So it's kind of like, how do you manage it? What do you do? Because it may be your genetics, but also maybe other things associated with it. So there you have it. I hope I shed some light to your question. Anyone who has any questions, please feel free to contact me. Fill out the form link below, ask the question. And if you want to join a health and success oriented community, click below and join a Natural Health newsletter. And do what you do best. Love, like, share the Natural Health podcast. Thank you for joining us on Natural Health Podcast. Remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health. Content and information provided here is opinion of Mahela Raguse and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mahela Raguse does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. And in those circumstances, shall the Natural Podcast, Mahela Raguse, any guests or contributors to the Natural Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mahela Raguse be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mahela Raguse nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in educational content.